A few weeks ago, I made the claim that the center-right represents a greater threat to genuine right-wing change than the left. I am by no means the first person to champion this idea, yet it is unfortunately the case that many people do not understand the danger posed by the center-right. It is not hyperbolic to argue that the right must use all available tools to undermine center-right figures in the coming months. There are far too many examples of right-wing sentiment being contained and quashed by tepid, weak moderates, and if we wish to avoid this fate, a strong repudiation of the center-right is necessary. Pragmatically speaking, although there is little we can do to influence Trump's cabinet, what is within our power is the ability to shape the zeitgeist and political discourse. We must focus all our firepower on discrediting center-right voices and undermining their ideas and narratives. We must work to ruin the credibility of the Jordan Petersons, James Lindsay's, Konstantin Kissins, and Ben Shapiro's of the world. We will discuss tactics of how to go about this, but first an overview of our enemies is in order. The center-right is broadly characterized by two attributes, Zionism and classical liberalism. Without making both of these ideologies toxic, problems pertaining to race and immigration cannot be solved. On a more technical level, it must be stated that the center-right acts as a handmaiden to the left by rebranding left-wing concepts as right-wing ones. The way the center-right goes about this is simple. First, center-right commentators identify an audience of low-information, temperamentally conservative people who are annoyed with the excesses of wokeism. Next, the center-right bills itself as the left's opposition to attract a viewer base, and will usually adopt Christian imagery to gain these people's trust. Then, the center-right will promote left-wing ideas whilst claiming they are right-wing ideas. As an example, consider how things like individualism and small government have become cornerstones of American conservatism. Authentically right-wing governments such as the Ancien regime of France, Fascist Italy, or the Third Reich did not promote individualism or small government. These ideas were held by opponents of the right, not by its supporters. While a learned person can recognize this, the center-right's low-information audience cannot, and as a consequence, they come to believe that concepts which are left-wing in origin define the right. To buttress the claim that the center-right is a handmaiden for the left, consider America's Republican Party, Britain's Conservative Party, and Germany's CDU. In America, school integration at the barrel of a gun occurred under a Republican president when Dwight D. Eisenhower sent federal troops to Little Rock, Arkansas. A few decades later, Martin Luther King Day was made a federal holiday, again by a Republican president, Ronald Reagan. The neoconservatives, in their agenda of spreading democracy by invading other countries, became part of the Republican Party platform because they supplanted the actual right-wingers in the Republican Party, such as Sam Francis. Across the ocean, a similar phenomenon can be observed in Britain and Germany. In Britain, the Tory party has ramped up mass migration even more than during the reign of Tony Blair, a Labour prime minister. In Germany, Angela Merkel opened the doors to Muslim refugees while the CDU controlled the German government. All of these problems listed in America, the UK, and Germany occurred under center-right governments because the center-right is a handmaiden to the left. Returning now to tactics, there are right ways and wrong ways to go about attacking the center-right. The most obviously wrong way to go about attacking them is to appeal to leftist priors. This should go without saying, and anyone who would do this should be disassociated from immediately. A far more common mistake is to play defense. Going on the defensive against these people distracts from their untenable stances and makes you seem weak. The focus should always be making them defend their positions and never giving them ground. As for strategies which should be engaged in, one such tactic is naming names. I am not a fan of the phrase, not going to name names. People should be shamed for their bad takes, and this goes double for the center-right. Another example of a good strategy is to disprove the enemy in a way that embarrasses them. For example, suppose Jordan Peterson is shilling for Israel and he mentions Alexander Solzhenitsyn or Carl Jung. Flooding his replies on Twitter with quotes from these authors about what they think of Jews is a great strategy. It is no secret that Peterson draws heavily from these two authors. By publicly pointing this out, he is made to look stupid in front of thousands of his fans. Likewise, if he tries to lecture on the subjects of fatherhood and masculinity, his replies should be flooded with pictures pointing out Michaela's sordid past. The point of doing this is not to red pill the masses. Some people are simply too stupid to comprehend the world around them. Rather, the goal is to discredit the center-right, not once, not twice, but constantly. It is all well and good to score open goals on leftoids, but to not target the center-right would be a terrible blunder on our part. A third strategy that is within our power is to stigmatize products made by the center-right and stigmatize the kind of people who would buy them. An example of this tactic being employed can be found in how the right responded to the Daily Wire Plus's awful animated show, Mr. Bircham. Mr. Bircham is in the conversation for the worst show ever created. There is nothing positive to say about this show, and it was universally panned upon release. It has no cultural relevance, and anyone associated with it was ridiculed, and rightly so. It is important to stigmatize products like this and the people who would buy them, because it hurts the wallet of the center-right. We may not be able to bankrupt the center-right and its Jewish backers, but we can ensure that money spent on projects like Mr. Bircham is money wasted by our enemies. These are merely some strategies that come to mind on how to combat the center-right. As much as I would like the center-right to be dissolved tomorrow, we must think pragmatically and work with the tools that we have. For my part, I will relentlessly countersignal the Jordan Petersons and Ben Shapiros of the world and make content that is antithetical to their worldviews. But do comment below with any ideas that you would like to share. I believe that currently, undermining the center-right is our #1 priority, and will remain so going forward.